by Councilmember Ellingson, and then I will lead the pledge.
Our Heavenly Father, we are grateful this day for the opportunity that we have to meet together and to discuss the business that is before us and to recognize the individuals and groups who are here tonight. We are grateful for the contributions of many in our city and to our neighborhoods and to bettering the community and the lives of those around them. We are grateful for the freedom we have to be together and to operate in freedom tonight. We ask thee to guide our discussion and help us to act in wisdom. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. If everyone would please rise, repeat the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we have a big crowd tonight. This is kind of fun. We got a lot of presentations, and it looks like it'll be a fun meeting. I'd like to excuse Mayor Packard. He's on a business trip, and Councilmember Smith as well. We appreciate their service, and once in a while we do have to miss council meetings, so we excuse them tonight. Do we have any scouts or students that are here? I know we have a lot of students for a particular reason, but anybody, a student in civics that's seeing what a city council meeting is all about? Okay. Well, I will accept a motion to approve the meeting's agenda.
I motion that we approve the meeting's agenda as written, except I'd like to move number 9 to after item 11 and continue item 13 to a future meeting.
Okay, I have a motion.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. We have some ceremonial opportunities tonight. We're going to present the Springville Museum of Art Royalty. Emily, are you doing that? Apparently, Emily's doing that.
Right now?
Yep.
Yes, and I'm going to actually introduce Cheney, who's doing it.
Oh, okay.
So kind of a double duty.
Very good.
This is one of our favorite programs at the museum. It's one of the oldest programs at the museum, older even than the Spring Salon. And it's just so heartwarming to see all of the art royalty here and their families. It's just such a great way for the community to come together. And our teen programs and high school programs specialist, Cheney Ray, is going to come up and do the presentation.
Welcome, Cheney.
All right, hello. Art royalty has been a beloved tradition of Springville's Art City for over 100 years. In its early days, the art queen and art royalty would raise funds through a penny vote in order to purchase artwork from the annual Spring Salon for Springville High School's growing collection. Today, Art Royalty is a substantial volunteer organization at the museum. In the last year, Art Royalty has donated over 250 hours of service, assisting with museum and community events. This year, Art Royalty also took on the role of giving tours that are open to the public in the museum. Because of their accomplishments, we would like to give them the Art City Spirit Award. This award celebrates artists John Hathan and Cyrus Dallin, who used their artistry and generosity to help shape Springville's identity as Utah's art city. Like Hathan and Dallin, these girls have used their gifts to uplift and serve others. This painting by John Hathan that we are going to present them with honors their lasting influence and is a reminder that through their efforts, Springville has become an even more beautiful and inspiring place. I would now like to present the 2025 to 2026 Art Royalty. Slada Crandall, come on up. Lauren Hathan. Clarissa Jensen. Maggie Miner. Morgan Nielsen, Lana Nord, Vivian Sweat, Evelyn Watkins, and Imogen Waite. Thank you, Council. We'd love to get a photo with you with the art royalty if you don't mind.
I'm going to have Councilmember Ellingson and Councilmember Wright come down for this photo. You ladies all smiling. Okay, very good. Thank you. Our next ceremonial agenda item is recognition of the Springville Youth Court members. Mackenzie Boring is going to help us with that, I believe.
Good evening. We would like to take a minute to recognize 14 graduating seniors that have been volunteering with Springville Youth Court throughout their high school years. If you're not familiar with Youth Court, it's a peer-based court, and these kids are the judge and jury for other teenagers from the local Springville, Mapleton, Spanish Fork area that come with minor infractions, shoplifting, fights at school, drug infractions, things like that. And it's a restorative program that the kids, they're not mine, the Springville kids that are volunteering are the youth court kids get to choose a kind of a punishment. We call it a disposition, and they get to help them do an assignment for accountability, for community service, and skill development. And these kids have been incredible in helping the other youth in our community, and it's amazing to see the impact that the volunteers have had on these troubled youth, and when they come back to report on their dispositions, and the change that the volunteers have, the impact the change that kids have on helping guide them in correcting their wronged behavior. So I'm just going to call up, they're not all here tonight, so if you
Mackenzie, before you do that, can I just put you on the spot for a minute?
Yeah.
Can you give us a specific example of how the youth court has helped an individual? No names, but just give us a situation. I think it'd be interesting for us and the rest of the community to hear how that works.
You see, I'll give an example. A couple of years ago, there was a girl that came in, and she had gotten in a fight at school. And so she chose to come to youth court instead of juvenile court. And she came in, and she was kind of, looking down, and she didn't want to do a whole lot. And her dad had come with her. And one of the things that the volunteer kids chose to do as her skill development for her disposition was to make dinner once a week with her family. And I thought, okay, well, this girl's going to put in a frozen pizza, make mac and cheese or something. And she came back 8 weeks later. It takes about 8 weeks for them to complete their assignments. She came back, and she and her dad had Googled recipes of all different cuisines. They'd gone to specialty stores finding all these unique ingredients, and the girl came back and she just said, I didn't realize how much I love to cook, and I didn't realize how much I enjoyed spending that time with my dad. And you just see a change on the faces of these kids, the ones that really take it to heart and really want really recognize that they made a little mistake that could have had bigger consequences and want to make changes to not have those problems again. So that one was one that stuck out to me, just to see that girls change.
Yeah, that's fun. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, go ahead and proceed with your presentation.
Okay, let's see. Are you guys all over on this side? Okay. So the first two aren't here. Is Daniel here? Daniel Anderson? Okay. And I'll just read all of their names. So Aubrey Korlewski, Sophia Cragen, Daniel Anderson, Angelina Love. I know Angelina is here. And it's just a small token if you want to pick a treat. I grab treats. Bonnie Myers isn't here. Molly Nielsen. Grace Chernus, probably just up there. Evelyn Watkins. Brooklyn Johnson. Bridget Johnson. Andalyn White. I saw Andalyn back there. Thank you so much. Matt Stewart. Thank you so much. Beckett Brockbank and Sully Hall. Thank you guys for all that you guys have done. I know I listed a lot and not many are here, but we've recognized them all, and we appreciate all the work you guys have done for the city.
Okay, very good. I'm going to have Council Member Millsap come down and have a picture taken with him.
Okay.
And parents, family members, whoever want to take pictures, come on up and feel free to do so.
Yeah, stand in there, yeah.
Jen wants us out of the picture. Thanks, Mackenzie. Okay, Chief, you've got some CERT graduates to present, I believe.
Good evening. It's my privilege and honor to introduce the CERT graduates for this year. Just a brief review of our CERT program. So we love CERT. CERT is our community emergency response team members. So these are volunteers from the community that sign up to receive extensive training in first aid and emergency response. So in a natural disaster or a large-scale emergency, first responders will be overwhelmed responding to emergencies, so we need help from our community. So CERT is an awesome program that gives community members training and resources and equipment to respond and to assist first responders during those critical early hours and thereafter in an emergency. So they come and they receive great training in first aid and emergency assessment, emergency response. So it's great for them. It's great for them to prepare themselves for an emergency, their family, their neighbors, and the community. So thankfully we don't have emergencies on a regular basis, but when we do, we absolutely rely on CERT. So I'm a proud CERT graduate. It only took me 2 times to finish. Most people get it done in 1, but got it done. Yeah. So, Karen Ellingson is also a CERT graduate.
So am I.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
So 2 out of 4.
Feel the peer pressure.
So tonight, we're going to recognize the people that just completed their initial training. It's a 28-hour course that includes a practical final exam that's a kind of a real-life scenario. So it's awesome. So we're here to recognize them tonight and to give them their official cards and then thank them for all they've done. So we'd like them to come up and here and receive if they're here to receive their certificate and then to get a photo. We like to start with Bill Ash, and his wife Sherry also took the course, but he's here to accept the certificate for her. She couldn't make it. And then we have another couple, Colin Ballou and Caitlin Ballou. We have Jeremiah Buckland, Bryce James, Ann Rival, Elizabeth Patching, and Rebecca Reen. Okay. Well, congratulations again to all our graduates.
Yes, of course.
We're not invited because we aren't certified.
Yet.
Yet, yes.
Yet. Yes.
Yep.
I also should just acknowledge too that no CERT program runs itself. We have a great pool of volunteers and trainers that facilitate a lot, including Joanna, our emergency management coordinator, and many others too. So we really appreciate all they do and their continued support of the CERT program.
Okay, we have one more ceremonial agenda item. However, we need to continue that since the recipients aren't here tonight. We've got a couple of planning commission members that are retiring, and we want to recognize them, but we want to make sure they're here before we do that. Okay, it's time for public comment. I've got two, three. Nope, two. So, and by the way, if anybody would like to make public comment while we're in this period, there's a form that can be filled out on the reception desk. Just fill that out and bring it into Kim, and we'll get that taken care of. So, Sarah Harvey, do you want to come up?
Yeah, I'm Sarah Harvey. I'm the chair of the Chamber of Commerce for Springville Mapleton. I'm glad to be here tonight. Last month, so this is the chamber update. And last month I was telling everyone that they would be getting these in the mail. And so you should have, everybody that lives in Springville Mapleton should have gotten one of these. If you didn't, or you want another one, let me know. It's full of all kinds of information about our cities and what's happening. One of the things that's happening this month is business bingo. And did you all get a sheet?
Mm-hmm.
So the actual sheets are a little bigger, so you can read them without magnifying glass. But this week, the cards will be delivered to all the elementary schools. The ages are pre-K to grade 5 that can participate. And they, as soon as May 27th happens, they can start filling up their bingo pages. And when they get a blackout, they can turn them in. They need to be turned in by June 13th at 3:30 p.m. because at 4 o'clock we're going to have the drawing for all the prizes. And that will be during Art City Days. We'll have a little booth for the chamber, and it's going to be so fun every year. It's so fun to see those kids win their bikes and all the other prizes that are given from local businesses and also people that just love kids. So May 9th, we're doing Bike with the Mayor. I hope he's going to be up for it. Are any of you going to join?
Yep.
Three of us will be here.
Awesome. And then next Tuesday at our new networking, since this is Mental Health Awareness Month, we are having a presenter from Intermountain Health that's going to be speaking to us, strong minds, strong business, ways that we can help our employees have better mental health. And then just looking forward so much to our City Days and Business Bingo. If anybody wants to contribute anything to those prizes, just let us know. And you can know how to get a hold of us through our magazine. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. And then we have another public comment from David Spencer.
Hi, Council. I'm David Spencer, and I'm running for County Commissioner seat B in this primary election. So I made it through the convention at 52%, so I'm moving on to the primaries. But I was on the Orem City Council for 12 years, so that's my experience. But I got into politics to save the baseball fields at Orem. And the baseball fields are still there, so I've done something right, I think, in the 12 years. But in those 12 years, not one county commissioner has come to Orem and asked what our needs are. And that needs to change. So as a county commissioner, I want to come and meet with the mayor, city council, and citizens to see what your needs are in Springville, because your needs are different than Santaquin or Orem or Saratoga Springs. So I think that's something we need to start, because I feel that Utah County, we're fragmented. We're not all on the same page. And if we got on the same page, we would have power to be able to go to the legislature and get the money we need for Utah County. My belief is the legislature leadership is in Davis County. So a lot of the money goes to Davis County, right, for their projects. So we need to have a voice with the legislature to make sure we have the money in Utah County. Also, our tourism dollars, we need to make sure that we're not picking winners and losers. It's not all going to Provo. The Provo Airport's nice, but you have to be able to share some of that money with the cities so that you guys can boost your tourism and have the money that Provo has or other cities. So just want to let you know that I'm running, and hopefully I can gain your support. And if you will, I have a little flyer if I can hand that out. Would that be okay?
If you could give them to Kim.
Appreciate it.
And then
Thank
she
you.
can get them. Very good.
Thanks for making time,
Thank you.
David.
Thanks for coming.
Appreciate it.
Okay. Kim, did we get any more public comment sheets? Okay. All right. We have the consent agenda. Any changes or modifications? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we approve the consent agenda items.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, item number 7. John, you're up.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Temp and council members. This item that's before you is dealing with a deferral agreement. It's an item that we've discussed before in work session, and the owners of the property are here tonight. And so if you want to ask them a question, Chase and Madison Ewell are the owners of this property we're going to be talking about. Where this property is located, it's out on a wonderful piece of property that's owned by the Condi Farms. And you can see right here, just to give you a location, just a reminder, here's our community park here to the north. We have Hobble Creek 950 West that runs north and south, and then it's just on the corner right here. And you can see that it's just a beautiful farmland. What is being asked is they're looking to build a house on that property, but there's no public improvements surrounding the property. There's some curb and gutter, there's some streets, but there's no other public improvements, no sidewalk, those type of things. And so in our ordinance, under Title 11, there's 2 ways that the city has moved forward in the past on properties where the city council finds that public improvements should be delayed. One is the city approves an agreement, and that's what's before you tonight, a deferral agreement. And the other one would be the city engineer recommending a waiver of protest, which would be to waive the ability in the future to go against a special improvement district that would put it in, and then the property owner would pay back the funds for that special improvement district. So again, the one that is before you tonight is an agreement that would defer improvements. And what we're talking about is sidewalk improvements, not curb and gutter. Most of the property has curb and gutter around it, and so they'd continue with the curb and gutter, and they would put some asphalt in, but it's the sidewalk improvements. Years ago, decades ago, a couple decades ago, there was kind of an engineering policy that a waiver of protest would be offered if there was no improvements within 400 feet of the property. That would apply to this if it was a few decades ago, because there's no improvements within 400 feet going to the west or to the south. Now, in this area, there are two other properties that currently do not have all the public improvements installed. So this one to the north is the one that's before you tonight. There's another one that's on the Condi Farms property, and then there's also one to the south there. Now, this one, we discussed this in work session. There was some confusion that happened between site plan and subdivision, a few other things, and so we'll probably get into that one tonight. This one, though, as you can see, there are no public improvements along the front. When this property owner came in to build, the engineer recommended not putting public improvements in because it's not a corner lot, and the idea I think the engineer was looking at was dealing with elevations and would you get the curb and gutter and that sort of thing right as well. And so this property owner did enter into an agreement. It's very similar to the agreements before you tonight. In fact, the agreement before you tonight is based upon what this agreement that was entered was. And so right now, staff has recommended against this. Our engineers are not happy with it, in the sense that it's extremely hard in the future to get the improvements installed. Owners tend to put their landscape and other improvements in the location where the improvements should go, and then connectivity to other properties becomes an issue. And if you look here at the picture, what they're talking about there is you've got an intersection here where you can go from one corner to another pretty easily, but if you don't have something on this corner, and this is something we talked about in the work session, then it's hard to go from this, from this southeast corner over to the southwest corner and then to the north. Now, they can still make that route through the other corners, but that connectivity is not there. Also, too, there's not really a whole lot of connectivity for walking to get to the house once you are on this property. But the way that they put, the walk to the front, that could change that, whether it's a driveway or something like that that connects to something going to the front door. And so the other thing is, lots of times when a property owner sees somebody else not put the improvements in, then they come and they say, hey, what about them? Why can't we be like them and not put in improvements at this point? In the code, there is timing for installing the improvements. Something has to happen for it to install. One of those, though, is just at the city's desire, the way that it's written. The city would give notice. The property owner would have 90 days to start putting the improvements in, 180 days to complete the improvements. Again, this is in the prior agreement as well that was entered into by a different property owner. If the properties to either side of this property develops, then they would put it in. And then also, too, they waive their rights to any future special improvement district in the agreement. So if there's an improvement district in this area, they would have to join that. And then if there's any future development on the property. And so a couple of these in some quick discussions today, not even face-to-face, just electronically. I know that the property owner would like to see some kind of trigger on this number 1 where the city would be against that, but I think he wants to kind of speak towards that. And then the other one would be on number 4, because it does say if there's another building built on this property besides the house, then they'd have to put it in as well. And so that's just something to think about. The resolution that's before you tonight, if you do choose to go forward and agree to the deferral agreement, does allow me to go in and change the agreement according to your direction on anything you want to do in this agreement before the mayor signs it. I just wanted to point that out. We switched the resolution from the last time we were here that just says, hey, this is the agreement, nothing else, in case you wanted to do something on a corner or something like that. So, any questions for me?
I'm sure we have lots of them.
Oh, okay.
Okay, what questions, discussion does anybody have?
What kind of building on the lot would trigger something? Are we talking a shed or an ADU or an extension to the
It
house?
says another structure, and so right now, if you look at how our ordinance is, a structure would have to be another building. It would have to be a building that's over 200 square feet because we don't require any sort of building permit for anything less than 200 square feet. So it would have
They
to be
said
over
why they don't want to build the sidewalks now while they're building.
They're here and they can answer that. I think it has something to do kind of with sidewalks going to nowhere, and so it'd be easier to maintain the property and make it look a little bit better without the sidewalks, is I think what they're saying, but they're here and they can answer that.
Okay.
Okay. Mr. Ewell, you want to come up here and give us your point of view on this?
Yeah, I think the main reason for not putting it in now is it's a house built on a family farm, and I think with putting in the sidewalk, there's not necessarily a development being put into place, and so there's not a lot more people coming onto the property or needing to traffic through the property. It's just our family building there, and so I think the desire would be not to have it because it doesn't lead to anywhere. The way that it is currently set up against the remaining farm, the sidewalk would go directly into what would be private property. And so there's not a lot of purpose for the sidewalk to lead anywhere at that point.
So meaning the sidewalk is here and the fence for the farm is about right here. Is that
Correct.
what you're meaning?
Yes.
And what about future development on this property?
Yeah, I think the concern there or the topic there would be eventually we'd want to do a shop. And so at that point, it would, the way the agreement.
Like a car shop, machine shop? When you
Correct.
say shop, what?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Car shop, exterior garage, and outbuilding built on the property. That would be the future development that we're.
But so you will have to put in a sidewalk at some point in time, and you know that it gets only more expensive. Is that a concern?
No, I think with the way the agreement is written and the purpose of the farm, we want to maintain the farmland as much as possible and have it undeveloped as much as possible. And so we don't want to be treated necessarily like a subdivision. We're not subdividing anything. We're not necessarily doing a big development. We're simply building a house on family land. And so I think the way that it is, we would not want it to be developed as long as possible. But if it were to be, we would be fine to then put in the sidewalk. It would make sense to us. It would attach to other sidewalks and kind of be consistent throughout the development at that point.
John, with that agreement, is it a legally binding agreement? You had a slide on here that talked about how hard it was difficult to get them
Yes.
to put that in. So if this agreement is legally binding, when that gets developed and they're required to put that in, what makes it difficult if they have a legal obligation to do that?
Just having both sides follow through with the legal obligation. So I'm not saying that Mr. Ewell would balk against that, but we have had issues in the past where it's come time to now put something in, and we've had property owners push back on it. Even though it's legally binding, you still, I mean,
They might not be able to afford it.
they might not be able to afford it, or it would be a situation where we're going to have to go to a court to enforce it, things like that. So, and I don't know that that would be this situation at all, but it does make it harder if it's not put in
But
at the time.
maybe in the long distant future, somebody else, will this agreement transfer to another property owner if that ever happens?
Yes, it would.
Okay.
So it'd be something that they'd have notice of, and they would know that it is a requirement in the future. Now, if you look at like a budding properties developing, and if it's still within the family or within the Condi Farm properties, to me that's an easy one because they're developing everything around, and you just put the sidewalk in as you put every other sidewalk in.
Right.
So.
And I don't know how either party feels about it, but if that's the concern, enforcing it later, people being able to afford it, why not have them pay for it now, hold that in escrow, and when the time comes, if there's a difference in cost between what was paid and what it actually costs, work that out with the property owner.
We have done that before as well, and we haven't really discussed that on this one though. I think the idea was we've already done it on one other property, just kind of moving forward with the same agreement, but that is something, if the Yules are agreeable to and the council is, that's something we could do.
We do have, I hesitate to call it a precedent on this, but there is maybe some correlation here where we had a property owner down here on Main Street that community development wanted to have put in a sidewalk, and because they were changing the nature of the property, and we determined that since we were going through the reframing downtown, that as soon as improvements start taking place in that area on reframing downtown, they'd be required to put that in. So it is a similar situation.
Yeah, and as pointed out, I mean, there's similar situations even by this property. There's others that have been done in the past underneath the prior engineer's policy. This was a few engineers ago. If there wasn't anything within 400 feet on both sides, then there wasn't put in too. You can see that like on 51 and other areas in town. So it's not. This isn't the first time somebody's asked to not install improvements. I think one of the things here, though, there are improvements all around this. However, there's not improvements on their side of the road, and so you look at it, and it's a very interesting situation, and I could.
I talked to the mayor a little bit earlier today about several things. This was one of them, and I told him I'd just present his viewpoints for the council to consider. Obviously, he understands he doesn't have a vote on this, but he was more concerned with setting precedent and what might happen with other properties and so forth. So that's kind of his concern. But personally, I don't see a problem letting this, passing this.
I also live on a lot that the sidewalk goes to nowhere. So it on east and then west of me, I just have a sidewalk, and it goes nowhere, and it's fine. It's never been a problem. It doesn't cause any problems. People just cross over at the end of my sidewalk to go across the street. So in all honesty, my concern would be definitely setting a precedence, and I feel like if you can afford it, I think it'd just be better to get it done and taken care of and never have to worry about it again. It'd be less hassle that way than having to try to say in 3 years, 5 years, when maybe it does get subdivided and the family decides, it changes their mind and they want to go that route, then you don't have to tear out anything. You don't have to worry about any type of landscaping that you may have put in to take it out. I just think it's less hassle that way. Like I said, I know what it's like to have a sidewalk that goes nowhere, and that being on a corner, I do feel like it's very important to be able to cross at least safely instead of only on the 3 corners. I do feel like ADA wise, it would be important to have the corner done and taken care of so people can cross at least to have a safe spot to when they cross.
Yeah, and just out of curiosity, with that safe spot, what would be the goal of them crossing the street then to cross the street the opposite direction where there's currently 3 connecting points?
Like I said, it just is, if they're coming across from the north to going south, then they can just stay on the same side of the road and then cross if they have to go the rest of the way down.
Yeah, and then also, if I could, just to that point, I feel like with the sidewalk then running further down the road, it then leads individuals to walk further down the road and realizing now they have to cross at an unsafe spot.
Yep.
Right.
So the sidewalk then leads to somewhere where it would potentially be unsafe to pedestrians.
And that's part of why I disagree on that one, because I walk that road, and the way that we walk is on the other side of the street, because that west side has no sidewalk. And so usually pedestrian traffic is going to the park, the community park, and it's going into our neighborhoods. So there's not really a lot of need to stay on that side of the street, because there's nothing to access there. It's just the farmland. So I have a concern with encouraging foot traffic to be going onto a side of the street where we don't have a continuation of infrastructure, and we're instead having them either choose somewhere else to cross or continue on the side of the road, which sometimes has cars parked on it. It's just dirt. It's right next to the field. So for those reasons, it concerns me more to encourage that crossing than to encourage the path of least resistance of staying on the continuous sidewalk. And because of that alignment that you mentioned earlier, where we would be taking that pedestrian traffic into farmland because of the fence placement, and the fence is not going to move, then I can see why it works better for your particular property to not do this. As much as in most circumstances, I would oppose any infrastructure holes, as I call them. You know, I do not like encouraging missing sidewalks, missing connections. But in this particular case, I can see how it's a unique situation. And I know that, you know, there's not imminent plans to develop there, or it wouldn't make sense. So I support this, but if there are ways that alleviate some of the concerns from staff, then I'd like to explore some of those if you're okay with that.
John, you mentioned when you were speaking about the city engineers and their concerns and so forth. Brad, do you have any? Do you know anything about this as far as engineering? Can you come up and address that for just a minute? At least the concerns that John mentioned.
Sure. I think one of the, maybe if we go backwards. I think the city engineering public works concerns in this regard are that in instances, and John kind of touched on this, is that it's harder when you allow somebody to not do what the city is typically requiring to come back later and have that done. There's all kinds of issues that go along with that, whether it be landscaping that's now encroached where there needs to be a sidewalk, driveways that are taken all the way out to the asphalt that now have to be pulled out so a sidewalk can go in and matching grades. And we have examples throughout the city where this has happened. And so I think in the case of the engineering division of public works, we're trying to make it to where we're not having to deal with problems later on because we've pushed them down the road. And I can see that the negatives and the benefits for the property owner, and I can see them for public works and so forth. And with that, I think John suggested in his presentation that right now engineering's suggestion is to have them put that sidewalk in, just for that case. And we do have places throughout the community where we're still struggling to get things in that should have been done when they were actually put together or developed.
Okay, thanks, Brad. John, you mentioned that curb and gutter is going in anyway.
Yes, it is. And if I could come up. Right now, most of the curb and gutter is in. You can correct me, Chase, if I'm wrong.
Does the curb and gutter include that ADA ramp? Is that in as well?
The ADA ramp is not, because usually you put an ADA ramp in when the sidewalk.
When you do the sidewalk?
Yeah. And so right now, it's kind of hard to tell. Oops. But right along here, there's curb and gutter, and I think it ends about right here. So this road, this 550 North, has curb and gutter on both sides.
Mm-hmm.
And so what would still be required is to contain the curb and gutter, the distance here, and put in the asphalt. And then if the agreement is approved, then there would be no sidewalk. So,
would it alleviate some of the concerns that you have, Brad, if we put something in the agreement that said, you can't put trees where the sidewalk's going to go? If you put in concrete, it has to be at the same grade or whatnot that it would need to be at. Is there anything that we could do that would help?
Yeah, I think Chris can take the record of that. But you know, those are things that would be helpful, yes. Because those are the issues that we deal with down the road, is trying to match things up. And we even have projects in town, in the old part of town, where we struggle to get sidewalk in because of the grade differences of driveways or landscaping or whatever. And when people plant and do landscaping, it becomes very important to them. And to have to come back in and tear it out to do things is difficult. So this is a difficult question, it is, because I can see the pros and cons of both sides.
Can you put that kind of language in the agreement, John? Yeah. Okay.
I can see how in this context it maybe makes sense to forego sidewalk for now. I pretty strongly dislike when there's an item like this that comes to us where it feels like we're deciding on an individual rather than just on like what's best for the city at large. And so then I kind of feel like personal pressure for what I think of this great family versus like what's best for the city. And so it's hard to like separate those in my mind sometimes. And I don't ever want to like kick the can down the road to a future council where they have to decide, okay, well, it's triggered now, so do we actually pursue it? And, you know, they've accidentally planted a tree 2.5 feet to the wrong side, and now it's where the sidewalk would go, and how do we solve this issue? So there's a part of me that wants to, I mean, I'm a little undecided right now, but there's a part of me that, like, does want to just go ahead and say, like, let's get the sidewalk in now for the sake of future councils and future residents so that it's not an issue that has to be solved later. But at the bare minimum, I do think that there's a lot of value to adding an ADA ramp there on that corner. You know, I do a lot of walking around town, and oftentimes when you're crossing a street, it's all about like waiting for a gap. And so if there's, you know, a line of cars and you're like, okay, well, I'll wait for these cars, I'll cross this direction, and then when there's a gap, then I'll cross the other direction.
So you're just talking about a landing site?
Yeah, at the bare minimum, I think we do need a landing site. Yeah.
So just putting the ADA ramp but not doing the rest of the sidewalk, is that what you're envisioning?
Yes.
Okay. How does that work?
Does that work,
Have
Brad?
stub outs from the
Yeah,
sidewalks.
you could do it.
Would there be enough room for someone who is in a wheelchair to then make that turn to go one way or the other? To cross the street, because the idea is that you're crossing onto this landing pad and then crossing
there and then
again.
cross to the other right. Yeah.
Yeah, so
So there's other crossings that they can make.
I mean, they can still go across eastbound and then go southbound.
yeah, they could come, from the east,
I mean,
come and then to the north.
Is there a difference crossing eastbound then going south than there is going south then going east?
No,
Traffic. Just depends on
it's just the traffic, I think, has been pointed
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
I
I know
don't
it's a
know that
small
I've
difference
seen
because you
many
could just
people do
stand
that.
there and wait. But
Yeah.
when you're out walking to get to a place, if you were driving, you had to stop and just wait for something that should, like a piece of infrastructure that should exist. I feel like we wouldn't tolerate that small inconvenience for driving, so there's no reason we should tolerate it for people walking.
Can we put an ADA ramp in the agreement?
You could, yes.
We can put anything we want in.
Yeah, we can't.
no,
I'm just
really.
wondering engineering wise how practical that is.
I don't know if that's really practical to just have an ADA ramp.
Yeah.
And again, and I'm not pushing for the sidewalk either, I'm just saying, I don't know that because if you put just an ADA ramp in, they have to go up to the sidewalk level, and then that would be a place, but they'd have to come back down to cross again. And that gets into the fact of now do we have 2 ADA entrances or just a big one that comes around the corner? And it depends on the site itself and the design, which is the best to meet the ADA requirements. So I don't know that an ADA ramp is the best thing to do either, unless it is connected with the sidewalk. So if you decide the sidewalk's not that important, I wouldn't put the ADA ramp in.
You may also have the problem if somebody goes onto the ramp, but if you overshoot it, now you're off of the ramp and in the dirt.
Yeah.
Like one wheel in the dirt
Mhm.
kind of a thing.
Yeah, good point.
I just think in terms of clumsy. I'm really clumsy. I would overshoot it. So.
I would definitely have a problem. Okay. Any further discussion? Okay. I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve resolution 2026-13, approving an agreement with Chase and Madison Yule that will require improvements to be installed at a later date with any adjustments to the proposed agreement that get put in.
Do you need
Do we need to put that
state
part in?
those?
Yeah, if you would state what proposed adjustments you want, that would be very helpful.
So we discussed having the finance. What else?
The landscaping where the sidewalk should
Landscaping requirements. Okay. So an agreement to include provisions for financial agreements for the installation. And how do you want me to say that?
Well, it,
Depends on what you mean.
yeah, if you're looking for some kind of financial, we might want to continue this and let us interact with the property owner. Unless you have set financial things you want to do, then we can talk to them and come back. But what I heard was nothing where the sidewalk would be for landscaping. And then there's also the issue of a second structure. Do you want to allow a second structure on the property without requiring the trigger for the sidewalk?
Then I guess we need a little bit of discussion before we make the motion of, do you want me to put all these things into it, or do you want me to move to continue it so we can have the language worked out?
I think it'd be wise to have that language worked out before we make the motion on this. That way we all understand what the language is, the family understands what the language is, and where we're going with it. That's my opinion.
That works for me. So,
My vote would still be no, even with those. So
and I appreciate your dissent. No, okay, then I will withdraw that half stated motion and move instead to continue item 7 to the next scheduled council meeting.
Very good.
I'll second that. It's a roll call vote. Logan?
We have to roll call on continuing, is that?
No, it's just
Do we
not-
just drop it?
Yeah, 'cause
Okay.
it's not a resolution, so it's just a vote.
Okay. Yep. So all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Let's see.
Mayor Pro Tem, there might be one against, so you might want to ask for any that are not.
Oh, are there any opposed?
aye.
Sorry, Mindy.
That's okay.
Okay. Item number 8, we have consideration of approving a sale of a portion of the city detention pond up on 4 South and 1800 East. Jake's going to talk to us about that. Oh, Jake's not going to talk to us about that. Terrence is going to take care of that for us.
Yeah, Jake was unable to be here tonight, so I'm stepping in for him tonight. Okay, so the purpose of this is just to ask for the detention pond split sale of the property up on 1800 East and 400 South. We'd want to consider the sale of 8 feet about of the property to the south of our detention pond, to the 484 South, to Craig and Jody Allred. And with doing this, they have agreed to reshape and landscape the pond that's existing there. This also allows for the homeowners that, for the plans that they have, that they have the daughter that wants to build on it, They have talked to Arrive Home Builders, and they need the additional setback to approve those plans. So the property at 484 South, as you've seen on the previous slide, lacks about 8 feet that they need in addition to. We also have another issue with the city property is kind of onto their property as well. And so this will kind of solve two issues. It'll clean up the properties and make sure that the property owners and our property is all on the same parcels that it needed to be. And also allows for there's still enough for the buffer zone between the property line. And the engineer department, they looked into make sure that we still meet our required volume for our 25-year storm. With this, the property owners, like I said, they agreed to do the restoration and landscaping of the current detention pond that's in the area. And the 8 feet will be just moving that existing property line to the north 8 feet, which is about $19,820 for the value of that property. The homeowners also talks to Johnston and Phillips as a low bid, and the reshape and landscape that pond was approximately $9,450. And so the final purchase price would be $10,370 of this property. The staff recommendation for this would be to approve the resolution for the property sale to the Allreds, allow the Allreds to complete the pond reshaping and restoration, and authorize the executive of the purchase and sale agreement of this property.
Terrence, I believe when we've talked about this before, there's still city access there, the right-of-ways and stuff. Do we still retain that? Or?
Yes, we'll still retain all that on the property.
Okay.
It'll be recorded as normal, just moving the property line to the existing, and so we'll have the buffers and everything.
So everything's still in place that way?
Correct.
Okay.
And you said this detention pond is only for a 25-year storm, not for a 100-year storm?
Yeah, for 25. That's what detention ponds are designed for in Springville.
And it still fits even though it's reshaped? And
yes, it's actually a little bit bigger right now than required space.
Oh, okay.
It's just on the west side. Let me back up so you can kind of see. On the west side there, where you can kind of see the blue, the light blue and the gray area where they'll be reshaping that's just going to be raising that to be able to hold that volume of water is what it's going to require. But the sizing of that will actually still meet the requirements for the storm.
Okay, so they're not doing anything there on the south end of it.
They'll be moving the property line.
Moving the property line is all.
In this
I got it.
photo right here, as you can see on the southern end there, the landscaping currently of the basin that is there is actually encroaching onto their property. So it's going to clean that up and address that issue as well.
Okay.
At the homeowners that's purchasing the property, to be able to clean that up, and it will be on this. That way, all the property and the landscaping will be on the city property, and the private property will all be taken care of the homeowner.
Okay.
Just one more thing, and Jeff talked to me about it this afternoon, is the way that the detention basin is set up, there's a possibility that in the future, and this is part of us working with Rec and Park, is that the way they have it set up in the reshaping of the southern end and so forth would also allow for a walkway eventually to go around the top all the way around the detention basin.
Oh, nice.
So in the long time ago when they did the Charrington subdivision, they just built it too big is the problem.
Oh.
But we did check the volumes after they reshaped that southern portion. It will still meet the 25-year detention for that storm, 25-year storm.
Excellent. Okay.
Good.
Questions, discussion? Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
I motion that we approve resolution number 2026-16, approving the sale of approximately 8 feet by 128.5 feet, which is 1,028 square feet, of city-owned property along the south edge of a Springville detention pond located at 400 South, 1800 East, to Craig and Jody Allred at the Utah County assessed land value of $19.28 per square foot, and authorize the Allreds to complete the pond reshaping and restoration work as proposed.
I'll second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. It's a roll call vote. Mindy?
Yes.
Yes. Logan?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Terrence.
Thank you, guys.
We'll move on to agenda item 10, since Logan made a motion to process number 9 till after 11. So we'll do number 10. Bruce, Bruce is up. Look at that.
Just
You're pretty quick and quiet, Bruce.
very excited to talk about this topic. I will actually just make a little bit of an introduction to the next 3 items that are on the agenda, all of which deal with the tentative budget that the council is considering for the city's fiscal year that starts in July and runs through June 30th of 2027. We refer to that as the fiscal year 2027 budget. Tonight is sort of the culmination of several months of work both by the council and staff. The council started back in the fall with some initial strategy meetings to discuss priorities and strategic directions. The council then met again in January to talk more specifically about items that should end up in the budget. Staff's then been working for a couple months to prepare both capital and operating budgets. And then we had another budget retreat in April where we presented the tentative budget in draft form to the council for more feedback and consideration. And tonight, the council would consider adopting that tentative budget and then setting a public hearing date in June. That'd be on the 16th. And this is the standard procedure that we go through that's actually set in state law, and we do this every year. This year, however, there are a couple changes to the process. In this year's legislative session, House Bill 236 was passed. It technically doesn't go into effect until tomorrow, but we're going to comply with it tonight in anticipation of our need to comply with it in the future. House Bill 236 deals with a number of issues, but primarily its focus is on increasing transparency and implementing a few more disclosure items that the city would provide to the public as it relates to proposed increases in the property tax. For the last several years, I think this will be the 4th year, Springville City has adopted small incremental inflationary increases to the property tax rate in an effort to keep up with inflation as it occurs and maintain the buying power of those limited property tax revenues that come in. The main change that we need to address tonight is House Bill 236 requires that an executive officer or the budget officer of the city present a statement dealing with the city's intent to increase the property tax rate beyond the certified tax rate. We've prepared that statement. Under our form of government and state law, the mayor is the executive officer and the budget officer for the city, and in his absence, the mayor pro tem would assume those duties. So, Councilman Snelson, we've got a statement there for you to read. The next item on the agenda is related to that, which is there needs to be a proposed property tax statement read and also a tax impact schedule presented and made available. And we've got copies of it here with the city recorder, if anyone in the audience would like to see those. Presuming that the council moves tonight to adopt the tentative budget as presented and move forward with that intent to increase the property tax rate, we'll put all these items on the city's website and put them out on social media as well. Again, the intent of the law is to inform the public earlier in the budget process of the city's intent as it relates to property tax. So with that, I'll turn the time over to you, Mayor Pro Tem, for that statement.
Okay, and this statement is agenda item number 11. It's a property tax increase statement. I'm going to try to go through it slowly since it's new. It's new to all of us, it's new to you, and it's new to our constituents. So I want to make it as clear and as precise as possible. So state law requires the city to make the following statement regarding property taxes. In Utah, a city's property tax rate does not automatically increase with inflation. When costs rise, maintaining current service levels sometimes requires a deliberate adjustment to the tax rate. Springville City is currently considering levying a property tax rate that exceeds the certified tax rate for the upcoming fiscal year, which begins July 1st, 2026. If approved, the proposed increase would generate approximately $97,000 in additional ad valorem property tax revenue, representing an approximate 3% increase in the city's property tax revenue. The purpose of this proposed increase is to help offset inflation-related cost increases in city operations that rely on property tax funding. If Springville City proceeds with this proposed tax rate increase, the city will provide formal notice and conduct a public hearing as required by state law, at which members of the public will have the opportunity to comment. Notice of this meeting has been provided in accordance with the Open and Public Meetings Act and includes a separate agenda item for this required statement.
Perfect.
We'll turn the time back over to you for agenda item number 12.
Thank you. Item number 12 is just making available and presenting the proposed property tax impact schedule. And I've kind of broken down what's on the printed version to make it a little more legible on the screen here. So again, as you mentioned in the statement, the purpose of this proposed property tax increase is to help offset inflation-related cost increases in city operations that rely on property tax funding. Just to be clear, those are all general fund departments, so this would be public safety, this would be parks, recreation, art museum, general governmental services, administration, legal, HR, finance, those cities, all of which have, to varying degrees, reliance on property tax revenues. Certain departments, like the recreation center, charges fees, so the amount of subsidy, if we want to call it that, from property tax is lower than, for example, the police department, which relies very heavily on property taxes because they don't really generate revenue outside of that. So as we get to the next part of the schedule, you'll see some disparity in the amount of funding that goes to those various departments because of their varying reliability on property tax. Currently, and I need to be clear, particularly for the public that's watching, there's a lot of chicken and egg issues when this law gets passed, and that's to say that the city goes through its budget process under the schedule that's set out under state law, which requires you to adopt a tentative budget in your first meeting in May. Property tax, however, is assessed by the county, and notice of the valuations and the ensuing calculation of what the city's property tax revenue will be doesn't happen until June. And then property tax notices that are issued by the county don't go out to residents until July. And so under state law, we're in a situation where we need to estimate what those are going to be, and the state law does give some flexibility. So the numbers that I'm putting up here, while I've got them down to the dollar, are really just estimates and represent general dollar amounts. Under the current budget year and tax year, the general operations portion of property tax revenue that comes to the city is a little over $3.1 million. That number stays the same, but for new growth. So if we have new businesses that are built in the city, or if we have new homes that are built, that will add to the revenue. But as for the existing, the revenue amount stays the same. And we're proposing then to add a 3% increase to the property tax levy that would generate an additional $97,000, bringing the total operations portion of property tax revenue up to $3.2 million. And when I say operations portion of the property tax, I'm referring specifically to the portion of the tax that the rate increase applies to, because there are two components within the city's portion of property tax. One is general operations, and that supports all the programs and services that we've been talking about. The other portion has to do with debt service, and the city has two general obligation bonds, one for the library and one for the recreation center. Both of those bonds were passed through votes of the city. So that is a component of property tax, but those dollar amounts are fixed, and we're not proposing to change those through this property tax increase. We're only dealing with the portion that supports general operations of the city. In terms of impact, the average residential property value in Springville is just over $500,000, and that impact under this 3% increase would equal about $6.36 for the year. And then in a business, and that's really a result of the fact that residences have a 45% discount on their assessed value in terms of what is the taxable value. So they really only pay taxable value of 55% of the appraised market value of their residence. Businesses, however, do not have that exemption, and so they're taxed on 100% of the value. So if you had a property, or a business that was worth $500,000, the impact would be $11.57. In terms of where these dollars are going, this quick little schedule shows you here. I've kind of tried to roll it up because we have a lot of departments that we're talking about. For public safety, which would be police, fire, and dispatch, you can see the dollar amounts here. About $15.3 million is what's included in the proposed budget. $46,000 of that is related to the property tax increase. Public Works and Streets, their share is about $8,800. Community Development, which is building inspections and planning and zoning, is just over $1,500. Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Services, so this would be city parks, canyon parks, the rec center, the rec department, the senior citizens, the library, the museum. That totals about $27,000, and then the remaining general governmental departments, their share is just about $12,000 for a total of $97,000. Again, we'll make all of these schedules and statements available to the public on the website and on social media, and I think we did prepare a resolution for the council to acknowledge that we had made the statement and also presented the schedule, so you could consider that now, and then I can walk you through the tentative budget.
I have a question. It doesn't really impact, I don't think impacts the vote. It's just a curiosity thing, and maybe you can answer it, maybe you even can't. I don't know. When you were going through your presentation on the tax revenue that we receive, that's accepting any new growth. So any new growth that comes in increases that property tax amount, obviously. Do you have any data that shows how much that growth impacts the services that we provide with that property tax? Do you understand what I'm asking?
I understand exactly what you're asking, and it's an excellent question. I don't know that I have numbers off the top of my head that would correlate exactly to that. Part of the problem is the staggering of the implementation of additional services. In other words, we sort of have a service level, and I'll use the police department as an example, that we have X number of police officers per 1,000 residents of the city. Can you accommodate, let's just say it's one officer for every 1,000, and it's not quite that number, but if it's for discussion purposes. Can one officer support 1,005 people? does one officer sometimes support only 950 people? And the answer to that is yes. At some point in time, when growth hits a certain level, we have to go buy a new police officer. It's difficult sometimes to buy only a tenth of a police officer. We can do part-time officers, and we do that, but in reality, there's this sort of stair-step issue that we have to deal with. And so the synchronization of the growth that happens usually fairly linearly with the service level change, which happens sort of in blocks, is difficult. So it's hard to correlate the impact of the growth with the dollars because they don't always happen at the same time.
Very good.
The general philosophy is for us to keep growth dollars supporting the service level that we've established, and we've tried to set fees and taxes to support the service level that's defined. And that's really the overarching issue around the tentative budget that we'll walk through now, is that in an inflationary economy where costs rise, in order to maintain the service level, we've got to raise taxes and fees to maintain the service level that's been established and that's expected by the community.
And those service levels have been established by the council.
Right.
And the council establishes those service levels, at least in my experience, based on feedback we get from our residents of what they want.
Right.
Nice roads, good police department, all the other infrastructure. We can go on and on about that. But that's how the council determines where to set that service level.
Correct. And
that we're trying to maintain with the property taxes.
And we quantify that feedback every 2 years with a fairly extensive and very statistically valid citizen survey. And then anecdotally, we address those issues through the strategy sessions with the council as you represent your constituents that you talk to. So there's fairly constant feedback in terms of what the right service level is.
Okay.
Also, on top of that, we can't control the outside economic factors, like, for example, fuel. We can't calculate those into our budgets, and those are rising costs that are external to what we can do. So those are just going to be costs that we're going to have to try to figure out as we go along, especially if they get any higher.
Right. And so the balancing act is dealing with those rising costs and maintaining the service level at the same time.
Correct.
Okay, any other discussions on, what are we on, item 12?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll motion to approve resolution number 2026-15, acknowledging that the finance director and executive officer/budget officer presented a tentative budget including a proposed property tax increase and a property tax impact schedule in accordance with Utah law.
A second?
I will second that.
I
I just want to double check though before we vote. Do we need to have gone through item 9 before we do this particular one? I just don't want to mess up the particular order things have to happen in.
No, I think it's actually more appropriate to have read the intent first, gone through the impact schedule, and then consider the tentative budget, as opposed to adopting the tentative budget, which includes the property tax increase,
Gotcha.
and then talk about whether or not you're okay with the property tax increase.
Okay.
Okay, so I have a motion I have a motion and a second. It's a roll call vote. Yes? Karen?
Yes.
Mindy?
Yes.
Logan?
Yes.
Okay. And we'll go back to agenda item number 9. Sorry about that.
Oh, you're missing the fluffy thing.
Yeah. Oh, whoops. Okay. So, you want to go ahead with item number 9?
I do, yes. This is really
Just a minute. Let me get my little sponge. Sorry about that.
No problem. I probably have more slides here than you want to see. Cut me off at any point if you don't want to hear them. But I think for the benefit of the public that's here tonight or that's tuning in online, this kind of gives an idea of the process that we go through in developing the budget, the considerations that we take into account. Most of this, almost all of this, is information that the council has already considered multiple times. And so I'll try to be attentive to if you're starting to glass over or not, but I'll move through it quickly.
Bruce, just to that point, if we start to glass over, it doesn't matter. The public is interested in this.
Okay. We do start out to Councilperson Wright's statement that there are economic factors that affect our budget here in Springville, and we do take those into consideration. We rely heavily on the Utah Economic Council and their economic report to the governor. So this is a committee made up of the brightest economic minds in the state of Utah that advises the governor and informs in large measure the budget that the state develops, much of which affects us as well, and the economic principles in terms of things that are affecting federal funding and the national economy generally, as well as the Utah economy, which also trickles down to us here in Springville, are important things that we need to consider. Just summarizing quickly from their report, strengths nationally that economists tend to be fairly in agreement on currently are relatively strong consumer spending, high productivity, and significant AI investment. I think your counterparts up in Box Elder County are probably having some good discussions about that over the last couple of days. Interestingly enough, that's one of the economic risks that these economists identified as well, which is that there's a potential AI bubble developing out there, and we may at some point see the effects of that. There's also considerable policy uncertainty at the federal level as things tend to change almost daily or hourly internationally, and the economic effects of those policies hitting us. Also at the federal level really is what feels like a perpetual problem of fiscal deficit and debt, which is something we don't deal with as much here on the local level, at least not on the deficit side. In Utah, economic strengths that have been identified are a diverse economy, similarly strong consumer spending, and a young educated workforce. And I'll show some indicators here in just a second that go to that point. Risks are high housing costs, which is probably contributing to some slowing net in-migration, and the national policy uncertainty. Some of that affects federal funding that comes both at the state and often trickles down to the local level as well. In terms of specific economic indicators, we do look at inflation. This is very generalized in terms of CPI inflation rate, which economists are predicting to be at about 2.8%, just down slightly from from calendar 2026 levels, but hovering right around that 3% line, which is where we've been trying to tag our property tax increase with, kind of tying it to inflation. The numbers are hard to tie out exactly, particularly because many of the inflationary factors that we look at may not tie directly to one inflation indicator, which is CPI. We have construction indices that are different than CPI that affect particularly our enterprise funds.
Bruce, remind me what our property tax inflationary increase was in fiscal 26.
Fiscal 26, I
one.
believe, was, this gets to the estimation problem. I think what we presented in estimate was about 4%. Once all the numbers came in and we actually calculated it again, it actually came in just slightly below 3%. And I say that it's impossible to explain it, but it's just the numerators and the denominators of that calculation haven't happened yet. And so we're just guessing what they're going to be until the county does their actual assessment of the properties.
Okay.
GDP is remaining relatively stable, a little lower than what we'd like it to see, but still growing at a rate of about 2%. Personal income is increasing at a rate higher actually than inflation, which is really sort of pointing to the realities of the labor market, particularly here in Utah, where unemployment remains relatively low, below 4%, which is often considered to be sort of full employment as in terms of what economists look at.
What is the current inflation rate? You said it was slightly better than inflation. What is inflation at?
So inflation was just nationally was at 3.2 right now and 2.8 projected for next year.
Okay, thanks.
So labor costs are increasing faster than other goods and services in the market, basically. Taxable sales is one that we look at also. 3.4% is what they're projecting, and that's a big number for us to pay attention to, because we obviously rely heavily on sales tax as a funding source in the general fund here in Springville. Let's take a quick high-level look at the budget. The total city budget this year is, including transfers, just short of $126 million. That's up about 6% over the fiscal 26 number. Most of that increase would be inflationary costs and the fluctuation of scheduling of capital projects. So capital doesn't happen nice and cleanly on a straight line. So we have projects that come and go year over year that could cause the budget to fluctuate up or down. The general fund budget's about $35.7 million with transfers, and that's up about 2.5% over last year. In terms of personnel count, we're increasing the full-time equivalent count less than 1%, about 2.37 positions citywide, and that's in a host of departments. Most of that is just adjustments in part-time hours to address service level needs. As we already mentioned, we've included in the tentative budget a 3% property tax increase above the certified tax rate, which would generate about $97,000 and have an impact of about $6.36 annually on the average homeowner in Springville. You're aware that we transfer 6.5% of the operating revenues of our enterprise funds, those are the utility funds, to the general fund to offset costs that are incurred there that help keep property tax lower than it would otherwise be. We're maintaining that transfer rate at 6.5%. In case you get asked, there is an additional disclosure requirement from the state. That went out in the utility bills that were they're probably mailing yesterday or maybe today. So those will be hitting mailboxes soon with more detail on those transfers. Utility rate increases are again being looked at for inflationary adjustments depending on the utility, and I'll get into some more detail here in a couple slides, but technically anywhere from 0, but really 2% to 4.5%, depending on which utility is. For all the utilities, that should result on average for a residential user at about a $6 a month increase. One thing we're doing differently this year in an effort to decrease the impact on your residents is to wait until November to implement that cost increase. We've historically done it in conjunction with the implementation of the budget, and that unfortunately coincides with some of the highest utility rate or utility cost months of the year. You get the summer heat with high water and high electric usage, and then we layer a cost increase on top of that. So in an effort to sort of tamp that down, we're going to wait until the shoulder months to implement the cost increase. And then we've discussed this a number of times. Included in the tentative budget are both revenue and projects associated with a transportation utility fee. We're not budgeting for that to happen until October, so you'll have a number of additional meetings, and you've already had several meetings to contemplate that. We're not anticipating implementing that until October. And the impact of that is $4 per month on the average residential user, although there is a study being done right now to nail that number down a little more firmly. Okay, I'll try to pick the pace. I'm sorry.
Sorry, can I ask a question?
Sure.
On this one? So just to make sure I understand this correctly, we have $6 a month in the property tax, and
This year.
$6 annual.
right, annually, and then $6 a month in utility and $4 a month in utility. So that $4 isn't part of the $6 annual calculation, right?
Correct.
They're totally separate.
Correct.
Okay.
So if you, I mean, if you add all those up, I mean, you're looking at,
It's about just over $126.
yeah, so
annually.
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 Yeah, a little, about $10 a month for the average residential user, keeping in mind that the utility increase, well, the tough fee wouldn't start until October. The utility increases wouldn't start until November.
And that amount, that total amount is assuming that the tough ends up being $4 per month.
Right.
Right.
That's not settled yet.
That's
Also, businesses have not been settled with the TUF, correct?
That's correct. That's part of that's the main factor that's being considered right now in the study that's going on, is how to allocate the costs across businesses.
Okay. So about an increase of $10.50 per month per average home.
Correct.
Okay.
Focusing just on the general fund now, revenues are up about 4.2%. Some of that's property tax related that we've been talking about here. We've actually got a very stagnant sales tax number. I realize that I just said the state anticipates sales tax going up about 3.2%. We're not seeing quite that amount in Springville, and I'm tying the reasoning for that primarily to population growth or the lack thereof. And what I mean by that is the way sales tax works in the community is businesses generate business and therefore sales tax in the city. Everything that's generated within Springville City, we keep half of that just for Springville. The other half of that goes into a state pool that's distributed across the state by population. And our population is growing slower than some of our neighbors, so our piece of the population pie is shrinking slightly.
And we heard today, Kempsey Gardner's numbers came out for our population, and we are down again this year for 2025. It's only 52 people, but still, we're down, we're not growing.
That's exactly right. And in fiscal 26, I was probably a little more optimistic than I should have been. So as I'm monitoring sales tax coming in this year, we're behind budget. And we've got enough months of data now that I think we're probably going to still miss our budget number for sales tax by about $250,000. And so I'm in terms of this budget number here, it's down 1.5% compared to the budget that was adopted for fiscal 26. It'll probably still be more than calendar or fiscal 26 actuals, but relative to the budget, it's slightly lower. We've also, depending on your view, if you're on the consumer side of things, you've had a very mild winter and a relatively mild summer before that. And that's great for residents' utility bills, but the city collects energy use tax, and so when those bills are lower, we also collect less tax revenue. So that's down actually about 5% compared to fiscal 26 budget number. We've also got a slight decrease, well, more than a slight decrease, about 12% decrease, most of it associated with grant reductions on intergovernmental revenues. Charges for services are up about 5%. The big movers there are ambulance fees and then program revenues associated with services that are offered in the general fund. And then transfers are up about, yes, sorry.
What are program revenues? Can we clear that up?
So it'd be things that you pay for recreation programs or going to the CRC, any service the city provides for which we charge a fee.
Garbage, recycling.
This is just general fund services, so this is not related to utilities. We'll talk about that one in just a second.
Yeah, making sure we differentiate those.
Yes. And then transfers are up about 12%. A couple big drivers in that. We mentioned that we're talking about fee increases on the utility side of things. That flows through for additional revenue to the general fund as those revenues are up. The other big thing that is moving this number is that we pulled the streets department out of the general fund, put it in its own fund, and are now charging the streets department their fair share of administrative overhead. So this would be a portion of legal, HR, finance. They receive services for these, and the finance department calculates an allocation factor for that. But that is a new administrative transfer coming into the general fund that didn't exist before. It existed before, it was just buried within the general fund, and now it's isolated because the streets department exists separately from the general fund.
Will you go back to that for just
Sure.
a second? So I see intergovernmental down 12% and transfers up 12%. That doesn't offset each other because transfers are so much higher than what intergovernmental is. So we get a lot more money on that 12% increase in transfers than we lose on the 12% grant reductions.
Yeah, the increase of 12% in transfers is really what's driving the 4.2% overall revenue increase.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm telling you, revenues in the general fund are going up 4.2%, and then I give you like 4 bullet points of things going down. But when the transfer rate goes up, then
Right.
that makes up a lot of ground.
Yep, I just wanted to make sure that was clear.
This slide just really is a snapshot of what those transfers are. So you can see we've got the utility funds there on the left listed: water, sewer, electric, stormwater, solid waste, golf course, and streets. We charge an administrative fee, so this is an overhead cost allocation for the services that I just mentioned: legal, finance, treasury, HR. There's a cost basis for this calculation, and those departments receive services for the fees that they pay to the general fund. You can see the amounts listed there totaling about $4.3 million. The operating transfer line, this is more of a policy issue for the council. And going back to the transfer rate that I mentioned earlier of 6.5%. So as we sell water, sewer, electric, stormwater, and solid waste services, we charge a 6.5% transfer rate to those operating revenues. And you could look at that potentially as a fee in lieu of a franchise fee. So for example, if we were a city that didn't have a power company, Rocky Mountain Power operated within Springville City, they would pay a franchise fee that would be actually probably more than 6.5%. Their rate of return is determined by the Public Service Commission, which is a state entity, and that's a negotiated rate that they go through hearings on. It's usually in the 10 to 11% range. For Springville City, you are the Public Service Commission. The City Council regulates the utility here, and by policy for many years has chosen to transfer 6.5% of those utility fees to the general fund to offset costs that are happening there.
Which keeps our electric bills lower than if we had Rocky Mountain.
Well, the fact that we run our own electric utility keeps our electric fees lower than Rocky Mountain Power. It also helps keep our property tax rate lower. And the real important part there is we can increase property tax, but one problem with that is it's an imperfect source of revenue, meaning it's not the most equitable source of revenue because not everybody pays property tax. So there are tax exempt entities that own property in the city that use city services and impact the city in terms of services that they demand, but they don't pay any property tax. So one thing that a utility transfer does, almost everybody pays a utility bill, whether they're a nonprofit entity or not. So this is an indirect way for them to contribute to those services that are being impacted with them being in the city.
Very good. Thanks for clarifying that.
We do also provide for those departments that have sort of commodities, water, electricity, for example. Those services are provided at no cost to the general fund. We do identify the costs so we can keep an accounting of them, but they're included in the transfer for transparency's sake. bottom line, we're just short of $9 million in total transfers. Some of those are for actual services received by the enterprise funds. Others are by policy or in-kind donations to the general fund in the form of utilities. Broadly across the whole city in terms of personnel, I mentioned already that the full-time equivalent account went up by 2.37, and mostly that's adjustments in part-time hours. The golf course, the finance department, museum, streets are all converting some number of part-time hours to full-time positions. There is included in the personnel costs about a 2.7% COLA, or cost of living adjustment, and that would go into effect with the adoption of the budget in July, and then a merit increase, which is the nominal number there is 3.2%, but it wouldn't go into effect until January, so the actual impact of the budget is half of that 3.2%, or about 1.6% for the remainder of the budget year. We had a good year in terms of benefit cost increases, both on the health insurance and workers' comp sides. Total increases there are more in line with inflation, which we'd rather see than sometimes we get, based on our experience and the utilization of those insurance plans, sometimes much larger increases, but this was a good year and only about a 3.3% impact, all of which has been covered within the budget. In terms of capital projects, general fund capital budget is about 1.17 million. There's about 100,000 in fire and rescue equipment, a number of parks and canyon parks renewal and replacement projects, and then public art projects of about $180,000. In the streets fund, the number is quite large, 12.4 million. Much of that is related to road work on 2600 West, $3.5 million. C road maintenance, this would be mill and overlay work, crack seal, micro-servicing, that's just short of $4 million. And then at 1200 West Center, roundabout at $2.1 million are all new projects budgeted for next year. The Vehicle and Equipment Replacement Fund has just about $2 million scheduled for renewal and replacement of existing fleet items, and our Facilities Fund has a budget of about $2.3 million. That includes both operations and capital renewal and replacement. You're all aware of the PAR funds that come in through the PAR sales tax that's implemented. You may recall, I'll just remind you that mid-year fiscal 26, we appropriated $600,000 for the Arts Park construction, and as a result of that, the PAR board did not recommend additional capital outlays with PAR funds for fiscal 27. There are about $120,000 in the annually recurring mini grants and internal programming that's being funded through PAR funds. And we'll still collect PAR funds, but we sort of had an advance on what we would normally put towards capital with a mid-year budget adjustment this year for the Arts Park construction.
And the reason we did that is because we got a huge donation from a local company that kind of pushed that forward, and we just wanted to give it just a little more boost to improve what we could have done otherwise. So that's for some big improvements.
Right. And progressing well, at least.
Yeah, I noticed that the other day. They got the roof on, and it's going real well. It looks really good.
It should be done by June 6th. So the grass might be very new, but it should be done.
This slide defies all best practices for slideshow presentations with way too much data on it. I'll just focus your attention to the right side of this. This kind of gives you an idea of where we're at in terms of rate increases year over year in the enterprise fund. So we're really focusing on utility costs, and kind of about 2/3 of the way down there on the right-hand side, two columns in bold. The 10-year average increase is about 3.5%. 3-year average increase is 2.94%. That's of the big three, we call them: power, water, and sewer. And these are residential rates that we're looking at. And really what we're looking at with this slide is how closely are we matching inflation, because that's really the fiscal principle that we're trying to follow, is to keep up with inflation. And you can see inflation on the next line down at a 10-year average of 3.35%, 3-year average of 3%. So we're not hitting it exactly, but we're within decimal points of it. And so I think we're accomplishing generally the intent there. We're down to the last couple slides. I'll just hit these quickly. Public Works, kind of rolling a lot of these up: water, sewer, stormwater, streets, solid waste. Highlights there: they're making considerable efforts to coordinate their projects across all the utilities to maximize when they dig things up, to replace everything that needs to be replaced one time rather than digging it up multiple times. They're really focused on project design and construction. There are a lot of things out there on the capital improvement side that need to get done. There are plans that the council has adopted that are on their radar and are being planned and designed and soon to be under construction. They continue to do cost of service analysis and rate design to best represent how to allocate costs through the rates to the rate payers. We mentioned already the transportation utility fee, which is budgeted, still being developed and studied and analyzed, but planning an October implementation on that, pending council decision, which will also involve a public hearing.
Is that in June? Do you know?
I don't think we've set the date for that yet.
For the public hearing? We do have a presentation in June though, right, Brad?
We'll have the public hearing on the budget.
Right,
The public hearing on
I'm
the
just
TUF.
talking about the TUF.
Yeah, I don't think we've scheduled a date yet for that.
I think it is planned for June, but it's not set yet. So
So we don't have a solid date for that presentation or hearing?
we're working with our consultant and also looking at our schedule.
Okay,
But we can get you an update on that.
okay.
Just, again, high-level capital projects for those utility funds. I already mentioned streets at about 12 million. Water has about a $500,000 project related to water infrastructure improvements on 16th South. They're also doing some big fire flow deficiency corrections, almost $1 million there. And then extending some water lines out to the other side of the freeway, out to 2600 West, where that road construction will start as well. That's about $500,000 just to get the water under the freeway. On the sewer side, some improvements at the water reclamation facility and the digester rehabilitation project, which is about $800,000. They've got a number of other smaller projects, including pump replacement at one of the pump stations out by the industrial park at $436,000. Stormwater has some new development reimbursements of $400,000 and 1600 South betterments related to the UDOT project there of $360,000. Power department revenue's up about 5%. That's a combination of system growth and quite modest rate increases. And I put 0 to 2% there because it is a 2% rate increase on residential and between 0 and 1% on most of the commercials, or commercial rate classes that we're looking at. And really we're just monitoring competitive positioning with neighboring utilities and Rocky Mountain Power, trying to be sensitive particularly to those businesses to keep their rates competitive. On the power purchase side, which is probably the largest single line item in the entire budget, is up about 2.5% or $550,000. They are adding an analyst position, although if we look over the last 2 years, through attrition, we've been very intentionally not refilling positions to try to right-size the department. So they're actually down about 16% on their FTE count, and now strategically looking to add an analyst position to fill a skills need there within the department. Capital projects of about $5 million. They're putting a feeder under I-15 at $600,000, adding some feeders at the Center Street substation for $500,000, and then about $500,000 of new development related infrastructure. I think this might be the last slide. The golf course continues to hum along. Revenue's projected to be up 11%. Now, part of that is a proposed rate increase of 8% that goes into effect in December. They are proposing to shift some part-time hours and add one full-time assistant golf professional. Their utilization, having worked at a golf course before, I will tell you 93% high season tee time utilization is close to unheard of. That's basically, you can't get a tee time.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope you don't book early if you want to golf at Hobble Creek is what I'm saying.
Is this adding a one full-time assistant golf pro? Do we have an assistant golf pro? We have the pro. Do we have an assistant
already? We have a head pro. We have a head professional. Actually, we've always had one assistant professional.
Mm-hmm.
At times, I believe we've had two assistant professionals, but we haven't had one for a second assistant professional for at least 15 years, I think. So, and I think the real focus there is to try to add some full-time experienced staff through longer periods of the day. Part of the challenge with the golf course is while it's seasonal, when they are operating, they're open before 6 in the morning and usually there until after 9 o'clock at night. And so having one golf professional and one assistant, it's hard to cover, especially when they need to have some overlapping hours, particularly to administer tournaments or busier times of the day. We end up with hours of the day with less experienced, often younger staff that maybe doesn't handle some of the challenges that come up in operating the golf course, and yet we're booking 93% of the tee times. So we've got tee times that are running well into the evening hours without a lot of seasoned full-time staff available to cover those shifts. They are making some capital projects improvements, continuing on with cart path replacement and putting money towards bridge and maintenance shed replacement costs that they're not quite ready to pull the trigger on, but will soon. That was the last slide. I'm happy to address any other questions you've got. I know that was a lot, a big data dump. Again, tremendous work by the directors and the council as well. You've sat through many long meetings discussing these same things and tolerated it yet again tonight, so thank you for that. But I'm happy to address any questions you might have.
The budgeting process, we shifted a lot of the burden to the directors. Can you maybe address how the directors are handling that, how they feel about it, what the general consensus of the directors are with taking this into consideration?
I think to sum it up generally, I get more sleep now and they get less. That's sort of the impact. So it's been good for me. I say that somewhat in jest, but it's the directors really have stepped up. And what I've noticed more than anything is the directors, and this is not to say they didn't understand their budgets before, but their attentiveness to the budget, and when I say the budget, I mean both sides of the equation, revenues and expenditures, has really sharpened. They're really aware of how their departments operate as business entities and juggling the demands that they've got to deal with as they balance a budget based on limited resources while still providing the service levels that the council has set. So they've really stepped up and I think owned that, and they're working well together. I still see a lot of cooperation between the departments. That was one of the areas I was worried about as we shifted the way we budget, that we might get a little isolated or siloed because everyone's trying to protect their little piece of the pie, but they still are cooperating quite well, and I think the city benefits as a whole there as they work together as a team.
Well, and when we've talked to when the directors have given us presentations, we've talked to them casually, they are very concerned about keeping their budgets tight. They're not trying to expand this. They're very focused on serving our residents to the best of their ability, like you just said, to provide the service levels that we've always provided, yet keeping their budgets tight. And I've personally noticed a mindset with the directors that says, we're going to keep our budgets tight, we're concerned about the residents. And that's what we're concerned about as a council as well. So I see a huge benefit in this.
Maybe I shouldn't editorialize on this, but I'll mention it because I think it's one of the benefits of this mechanism of budgeting is they're much more attuned to what service level means and keeping the bloat of government to a minimum, because the way we've structured it, they really can't grow if there's not growth within the city. And as we just mentioned, we're not seeing significant growth right now. A point in time will probably come when that happens and we'll have an expansion, but that expansion will be driven by natural growth. But as I look across many other cities in the state, I see less fiscal discipline in that regard. It was curious to me, there was a little sort of self-administered survey that went out by one of the city managers in the state, and it's not comprehensive, but I think there were probably about 40 cities in the state that responded back to the survey, and he was just preparing for his meeting like this for tonight, asking how many other communities are raising property taxes, and of the 50 or so that responded, easily half of them were proposing property tax increases. The 3% rate that we're talking about tonight is one of the, I think I only saw one other that was lower at 2%. Almost everyone that is raising property tax is raising it significantly more than 3%, and several were over 100%. One was 250%.
Wow.
And that's really part of what I think we're trying to do here is, I think it's fiscally responsible to mirror inflation, but you have to be disciplined about doing that every year and paying attention to it. Otherwise, you end up in a situation where we've got to raise property tax double-digit or triple-digit numbers, and nobody likes that. I think that's less than ideal fiscal management, and our directors are on board with that. They recognize that and are doing a good job to keep things under control and within the service levels that are defined by the council.
I think our directors and the people that work with them are the driving force in why we consistently get the best city to live in.
I'll second that, and maybe take that as a cue to sit down.
Well, before you do, I just want to thank you, your staff, all of our directors for the hard work and the effort that you guys have put forth for this budget. I know that you have put all you can to make sure that the residents are not being overburdened, and I really appreciate that. I really appreciate all of your efforts, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Most of that will go to the directors, I would say.
Because like you said, we've had lots of conversations about that, and that just reflects the amount of work that goes into each presentation from everybody, you know, from your office, from the directors, from the people that they work with. And so, yeah, we appreciate the careful attention to the budget that goes into this process and your efforts to ensure that we understand what's going on with these numbers. It's a lot of pages when we go through the whole budget, and we have done that in meetings, and we've gone section by section, and your patience with us in explaining things is appreciated.
Thank you. And I'll reflect the thanks back to you, because it is a lot of work on the council's part too, to come in on a very part-time basis and absorb hundreds and hundreds of pages of numbers that are complex and intertwining to a point that it's difficult to follow. So kudos to you as well.
Thank you, Bruce. I have a question for Scott. A couple of weeks ago, I think we talked about the feasibility of putting broadcast capabilities in the multi-purpose room. Has any progress been made on that? Or where do we stand or whatever? I don't know that it's progress we need to make, but just kind of an update.
Nothing really. I know the mayor had said he was going to talk with Troy a little bit, and Troy and I just haven't been able to connect to really see. So it's not off the radar, but we haven't proceeded any further on that right now.
Okay. Thanks.
So
Well, it's
we're
only
just
been
kind of waiting till Troy
it's,
gets
al-
back.
it's only been a couple of weeks, so.
We'll get on it though.
Okay, thanks. Any other updates, comments, anything?
Do
for
we
the
want to
council?
make a
think we need
motion
to-
on?
Oh,
13.
yeah. We do need to finish that.
Do you want to do presentation on 13, or do we just continue it before
we
the
just continue.
presentation?
Let's continue it.
Would you like a motion?
Okay, so yes, I would like a motion, thank you.
Okay, then I move to continue item 13 to the next regular.
We've already
We need it-
continued
we've done that.
13.
We need to make a motion on number 9.
9, okay. Okay, I move to approve resolution 2026-14 and adopt the City of Springville's tentative budget for fiscal year 2026-2027 and set a public hearing for adoption of the final budget on June 16th, 2026 at 7:00 p.m.
Okay, I have a motion, I need a second.
I will second that.
Okay, motion and a second, it's a roll call vote. Karen?
Yes.
Mindy?
Yes.
Yes. Logan?
Yes.
Okay.
I forgot that was part of your original motion
Yeah.
on the agenda.
Maybe I jumped the gun a little bit, but
Well, it's been a few
take care of it.
hours,
And
so.
No, that's good. John, we don't have a closed session?
No closed session.
Okay, so we need to adjourn.
I do have one item to report.
Oh.
The steering committee for the Spring Creek Trail feasibility study had their final meeting this past week, and I'm feeling pretty good about where things landed. And
Oh, good.
they'll come out with their report sometime in the coming weeks. But I'm pretty excited that we'll have a trail from Springville to Provo, at least on the books,
Yeah.
at some point in
And
the
that-
future.
That's the
date.
missing connection.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's very good. Good work.
I'm glad that the hopes and dreams plans are going forward.
Anything else? Okay, I'll accept the motion for adjournment.
Mindy
I so
Kerr.
move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.